call the meeting to order. Chairman Eckhoff is trying to connect, and unless and until he does, I'll run the meeting. When he does, I'll be happy to turn it over to him. We'll take this call, please.
Okay, Chairman Eckhoff. Member Covert. Member
Here.
Yeah. Member DeCiani.
Here.
Member Elliott.
Here.
Member Keeley. Member Kuczewski.
Here.
Member Larson.
Here.
Member Noonan.
Here.
Member Pachalski. Member Renahan.
Here.
Member Tornatore. And Member Zay.
All right, do we have anybody signed up for public comment? We have a quorum. We do not have a physical quorum here, unfortunately, so we are going to have to address everything by roll call. I'll try to combine a couple of things before I go. Chairman's remarks, but I'll get those to just put the starting points of our unit by unit review of
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
the sound quality is particularly bad today. I'm not sure why. Can I just ask that maybe if the people who are remote could put themselves on mute, that might help things.
All right, is that any better?
That is, thank you.
Okay. So just to repeat myself, I'm going to leave Chairman's remarks to Chairman Eckhoff if he's able to join the meeting, other than just to say this is the start of our budget process. We'll have to start. We obviously started that last week. You all know what we're facing. We have two budget presentations this morning from the State's Attorney's Office and the Public Defender's Office. You received the materials as we promised last week so that we could get those. I do see Chairman Eckhoff on the line. Chairman, do you want to take over or you want me to keep going?
Keep going.
All right. So with that in mind, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the JPS meeting of Tuesday, July 7, 2020. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, roll call.
Okay. Member Zay. Member Eckhoff.
Aye.
Member Covert.
Aye.
Member DeCiani.
Aye.
Member Elliott.
Aye.
Member Healy. Member Kuczewski.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Member Noonan.
Aye.
Member Pachalski.
Aye.
Member Renahan. Member Renahan.
Aye.
Member Tornatore.
Aye.
All ayes.
All right, those are approved under budget transfers. We have a motion and a second with
Moved.
budget transfers. Any discussion as to these? Seeing and hearing none, need a roll call.
Aye.
Member Eckhoff.
Aye.
Member Covert.
Aye.
Member DeCiani.
Aye.
Member Elliott.
Aye.
Member Kuczewski.
Aye.
Member Larson.
Aye.
Member Noonan.
Aye.
Member Pachalski.
Aye.
Member Renahan.
Aye.
Member Tornatore.
Aye.
All ayes.
Okay, on to resolutions. and entertain a motion to combine and approve items A through E, which are all acceptance and appropriations of various grants.
So moved.
Second.
And we have a motion, and a second to combine and approve those resolutions. Any discussion with respect to any of them? Seeing and hearing none, roll call.
Member Zay.
Aye.
Member Eckhoff.
Aye.
Aye.
Member DeCiani.
Aye.
Member Elliott.
Aye.
Member Kuczewski.
Aye.
Member Larson.
Aye.
Member Noonan.
Aye.
Member Pachalski.
Aye.
Member Renahan.
Aye.
Member Tornatore.
Aye. All ayes, those are approved under procurement requisitions. I'd entertain a motion to combine and approve items A through F.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to combine and approve items A through F under procurement requisitions. Does anybody want to discuss any of those individually? Seeing and hearing none, need a roll call.
Aye.
Member Tornatori. Member Say.
Aye.
Member Eckhoff.
Aye.
Member Covert.
Aye.
Member DeCiani.
Aye.
Member Elliott.
Aye.
Member Healy. Member Krajewski.
Aye.
Member Larson.
Aye.
Member Noonan.
All ayes, those are approved. On to grants.
Chairman, I'm going to move buying grant, 9 grants, 10 travel, and 11 informational.
Motion to combine and approve 9 grants, 10 travel, which has 3 separate authorizations, all at no cost to the county, and 11, which is the information from public defender's statistical report. We have a second. We have a motion and a second to combine and approve, or at least receive and place on file the informational item. Any discussion with respect to any of those? Member Chaplin.
Just a question with the travel. Is this, let me put my glasses on. Is this an overnight travel that they're staying?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just a little concerned that we're sending employees to travel overnight with COVID. Are there any concerns about safety? Will they come back and then work from home for a while, or how are we going to deal with that? Just because we don't want to have our employees, exposed.
We do have Murray Snow here. You can
There.
speak to that.
We're going to be traveling inside Illinois.
Oh, yeah, but still staying at a hotel and things like that. I don't know.
Yeah, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is one overnight travel. The 2 are overnight travel for 1 night. They will be staying in a hotel. They will be tested when they get back. The only reason they're staying in a hotel is because they're starting so early in the morning down in Urbana. So when they get back, they will be tested, and if there are any symptoms, they will be forced to stay home. But the 2 going down to Urbana next week are both volunteers. They are members of our communications unit, so they are not normally in the office with our regular staff.
Okay, great. I just want to make sure that there were precautions. Testing is a great idea. So thank you very much.
Okay, any further questions or comments with respect to any of these items? Seem to have lost member to start, by the way. Seeing and hearing none, roll call, please.
Member Eckhoff.
Aye.
Covert.
Aye.
Member DeCiani.
Aye.
Member Elliott.
Aye.
Member Krajewski.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Member Noonan.
Aye.
Member Pachowski.
Aye.
Member Renahan.
Aye.
Member Tornatori.
Aye. Member Desart is back on. Did you get your vote? Okay, gotcha. Sorry. Okay, all ayes, those are all approved. On to your favorite thing, our budget presentations, and we will start with the public defender's budget.
Good morning, everybody. I'm excited to be the first budget presentation, or afraid, I'm not sure which. Let's get into it. The first, next slide, Wendy. First, the history portion of the show. Why is there a public defender's office at all? Other than the right thing to do, the U.S. Constitution requires it. Essentially, if you can't afford an attorney on a criminal case, provide one free of charge. That's the way our criminal justice system is set up. Next slide, please. We're the ones to make sure that everyone does it right. We advocate for anyone who can't afford their own advocate. Justice in our community depends on it. The principles of the legal system depend on us as well. All of our clients essentially come from vulnerable groups. Underfunding our office makes our clients even more marginalized and more vulnerable. Next slide. This slide is really for the rest of the partners of ours in the courthouse, the state's attorney's office, the chief judge's office, probation, and the clerk. During these meetings, there's a lot of times people have mentioned the courthouse has been closed. That's never been true. We have had staff in the office or in the courthouse or the jail every single day during COVID. Christmas morning, Thanksgiving, every single day we have people there. And although the courthouse did reduce operations, we never ceased. So just because you don't see us doesn't mean we're not working or that we haven't been doing things. Next slide. This is the graph portion of today's show, and these are pre-COVID numbers. These are my misdemeanor cases, open files that we're currently holding. I looked at every March, and I'm sorry, the bottom of the screen, it should start at March 2013 and go to March of 2020. I don't know why those numbers are off. But essentially, those cases that we were currently holding kind of bounces up and down, but ranges between almost 1,400 to a little over, maybe almost 1,800. I don't consider that necessarily a problem. Next slide. But felony is alarming. Again, these are pre-COVID numbers. These numbers were pulled in each March of the last 7 or 8 years. And essentially, we've almost doubled in the open felony cases that we're holding. Our staff hasn't really changed. We don't have a lot of turnover. But we went from essentially 800 in, I think it's 60 cases, to about 1,600 open felony cases this March. Next slide, please. So our total adult cases, which is probably 90% of what we do, adult criminal cases looks like this. When you combine misdemeanor and felony, there's been a significant increase of the cases we have pending. Next slide. And so if you take those and you add the effects of COVID, we have pressures, both the existing caseload, we were very, very thin staff-wise to begin with. We have this backload because we haven't been able to resolve as many cases because of the virus. We are getting more new cases, and more people are going to qualify for services even if they had a private attorney previously because of unemployment or underemployment. Our services are directly related to people's ability to afford an attorney. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're still in the charts and graphs portion, but we're ending the money part of the show. 94% of my budget is personnel. I've always asked for what I think I need. I never add a bunch of extra and hope to get a little less. And I want to thank you. You've pretty much always given me the things I really need. Let's get into the numbers you care about. And really the 94% number, next slide please, is the personnel number. We have always run very thin without extra staff. Until yesterday, I was covering a felony court call for the last 6 weeks. And I've done it many times for medical and maternity leaves. An event like a pandemic makes a staff like mine that doesn't have a lot of extra incredibly strained. This is the one line item that has an increase. Now it's significant, I will admit that. And let's get into why I think we actually need more and not less. What do we really need? We need lawyers. I wanted, for members Covert and Renahan, I looked for Simpson characters that had female lawyers. I couldn't find any. But primarily due to COVID, I think we need 2 new attorney positions. I want to say that I'm going to fill these positions with current headcount. It's unfunded, but I'm going to stay within my headcount. I have 2 open headcount right now, and I need to fund that. And it's really to alleviate some of the felony case issues we're having. One example is for Focus Court. Focus Court, as you probably have heard, has been wildly successful. So successful that we have so many cases there we can't currently manage with our current staff. I have 1 attorney currently managing all of the Focus cases, mental health court, and drug court. That is not feasible for 1 lawyer to handle all 3 of those programs. In the past, I asked for funding and got partial funding to fill that spot, and I told you I wouldn't fill it unless I needed it. I haven't filled it, but now I need it. So what would happen if you don't? I think not funding us properly may cost the county more. The ACLU and other entities have sued counties when their numbers have gotten too high, and I want to prevent both that and any kind of liability for my lawyers. And it's actually more economical for us to handle the cases. At some point, legal ethics will dictate to me that I have to stop taking new cases, and I don't want to get to that point. But I am worried because I think it would cost the county more. If we had to get some kind of independent contractors in, it would cost the county way more than funding our office. Next slide, please. So I want to get back to the personnel numbers. When we haven't needed it, we didn't spend it. If you look at 2019, I was over $100,000 less than what I was budgeted in my final numbers for 2019. And I'm really sorry this is coming at a time when there's all these other financial pressures. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk about reductions. This is the reduction part of the presentation. It's also the shortest part, but here's what we tried to do. I cut every other line item except personnel or kept it the same. The chart up there are all the line items that are lower. I will admit that doesn't add up to a lot of money, but we tried to do exactly what we could and stay reasonable in terms of what we would need for next year. Okay, next slide. We are in the last and feel-good portion of today's presentation. Next slide. I want to say, and I'm confident, that DuPage County is the most efficient public defender's office in this area. And you should feel good about that, because we do. We're also extremely professional and effective. And just ask a judge, any criminal judge, I don't care who. But I can prove the efficiency part. Next slide, please. There are national standards on support staff per lawyer in a public defender's office. We are well under those ratios. But what about locally? How do we compare locally with public defender's offices in our area? Next slide, please. These are the head counts of the public defender's offices in DuPage, Kane, Lake, and Will. Again, my request does not change this slide. These are 2020 head counts. We are the lowest. More importantly for you, if you go to the next slide, we are by far the lowest budget. Again, from left to right, that's DuPage, Kane, Lake, and Will. So Lake County has 3 more head count, but $2.5 million more. Will County has double our budget. If you go to the next slide, now this is 2016 data, because getting case counts for this year is difficult to do right now during the pandemic. But essentially, if you take our total budget, you divide by our total number of cases in 2016, we were the most efficient office in the area. And essentially, it costs us $307 to litigate a case. That could be a case we represent someone for 3 minutes. It could be a case we represent someone for 3 years. I counted them all the same. Next slide, please. Late last year, we started a foundation. We're a 501c3 for client needs, food, transportation, and clothing. I do want to thank Joan Olson and her staff. They featured us in a county newsletter. We're excited to be able to do that for our clients. Obviously, that's taken kind of a back seat right now. There are no public funds related to that. I just thought you should know about it. Thank you, and I'm ready for questions.
Can we close the screen so I can see everybody? First of all, Jeff, thank you very much. I got to say, every year I think you give the best budget presentation of any department. That's no offense to anybody else, but you're thorough, entertaining, and actually very explanatory. So I do appreciate that.
Thank you.
With that, I'll open up to questions. Member Pachowski, and then Member Elliott.
Does and you do a great job. Backlog of cases, and if we have social distancing on our court calls a lot less. So eventually, it seems to me we're rising with stuff that's on the back burner, and our court calls are, what are they, 1/3 what they used to be. There's going to come a point in time where we're going to have to start addressing this huge backlog. If there is a huge backlog, how do you see that happening, or what's going to go on in the future with this?
I think it's going to take everybody to participate. I think the way we litigate cases or resolve cases may have to change because we're going to have so many. So I think it's going to take a team effort between my office and Mr. Berlin's office to try to, I think, prioritize the cases. Right now, there are caps to how many cases we can call in each courtroom per day. That has helped. And I do think that at some point we're going to go to a remote, more like a Zoom court, like in the criminal arena. I don't know if we're going to get there, how soon we will get there, but I know they are doing that in other parts of the courthouse, in civil and domestic relations.
That was my point. Why aren't we doing more Zoom hearings in these criminal cases? Because I think with the caseload that we have, Zoom hearings make more sense to move certain cases along. Because how many cases are pleas and how many go to actual trial? It's just having a case on a call moves it along. And the second point, with people laid off with COVID-19, you would have to have a volume of more people coming in now too.
We do. I don't know what the numbers were yesterday, but I know there was a day last week we had 25 people come down for an interview to our office. We are not doing those interviews in our office. We're getting their information and we're doing it remotely. My investigators are calling those people. I do think we have been able to still kind of move the ball in the cases. So a lot of times if we're trying to get discovery or we're subpoenaing records or we're negotiating, those things still happen. And we can do those even without the clients present. And a lot of times the judge will waive a client's presence if it's not absolutely necessary. I do think due process concerns would make it difficult to do hearings and potentially pleas, or at least contested pleas remotely. I think that would be problematic. But we are looking into potential waivers. Other counties are doing waivers for those kind of things and having a client sign off on them. But that's something we have just started to discuss.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, so thanks for your presentation, which was really informative. And I thought The Simpsons was pretty funny too. I guess my question is about the stats you put up on our peer collar counties.
Yeah.
I mean, those differences are pretty stark. And I'm curious if you could just comment on maybe what's driving some of the cost, either savings on our end or costs incurred on the other end. For example, Lake County, I think you pointed out that they had only 2 more headcount than we did, but substantially more spending. So obviously the additional spending isn't driven by headcount. What's driving that? Are they utilizing some sort of a technology, or is it capital? What is it?
You know, I'm not certain. In each county is a little different. I can tell you, I can give you a few examples. One of these counties paid in 2020, $33,800 for covering bond court. We paid $0. So bond court is part of an attorney's assignment. I've made it a part of their assignment. I do give my staff a couple of personal days to cover that, but I don't give them any money. Whereas I think it might be Kane County, I don't remember. One of the counties is giving people actual cash to show up before work, after work, and on the weekends. One of these counties for trips and training was budgeted $25,000. We were budgeted $6,000. We're our own CLE provider. I don't know if they go outside for training or how they do that, but we provide our own, not exclusively, but primarily. I would say 90% of our continuing education is provided in-house by our staff or inviting guests to speak. And that's a pretty minimal cost. We have to pay to register with the CLE entity in the state, but I can't explain why there's more in all of those other counties. I do know that we're very thin. I mean, we don't really have extra people. So I have warm bodies in every room, and when someone isn't here, that's problematic.
Well, I mean, thin might be okay if we're getting the job done, and I guess, or thin might be bad if we're not getting the job done. And I think what I hear you saying is you're looking at the next year and you're thinking 2 more bodies is what you're going to need to get the job done. Is that right?
Yes, I think minimum. I think numbers-wise, we could probably justify way more. I don't feel comfortable asking you for more, and I think we're going to try to manage with the 2. It's really in felony is the bigger problem that I see. And so both of those positions would be to help alleviate some of the pressure in felony. So, you know, one of the positions may be taking kind of the cases that take a lot more time, post-conviction petitions in particular. So you unpack that box and work on it for 45 minutes. If you're not doing it for several hours, it's not worth it. It's very hard to do that when you have 150 pending felony files. And some of those clients are in jail because those end up taking more of a priority. So I want someone to focus on those bigger cases where they can get into the weeds and take them off the plate of the people in a courtroom with more active clients.
Thank you.
Chairman Eckhoff.
I just wanted to emphasize what I said last week during the initial budget hearings is a lot of this has been foisted on the public defender's office because of COVID-19, and people can no longer afford their private attorneys. So if they've got a possibility of jail, then they get a court-appointed public defender. And so a lot of this is on COVID-19 related. But Jeff's been the public defender for a long time. He does a great job. And we've always, at the county board, and I've heard state's attorneys talk about it, that we want a stout public defender's office, not just because people deserve good defense or the ACLU's coming in, but it also protects the victims and the families of crime, because you don't want a claim of incompetency of counsel and have to relitigate or retry the case again. And so we've got good public defenders, and the people who are victims of crime only have to go through this once and not go through an appeal process and then retry the case. So I'm surprised that Jeff's only asking for 2 people right now. I wouldn't be surprised if things get worse and more people drop their private attorney, that we're going to need more than that. But I definitely support the 2 he's asking for now.
Member Desart, and then Member Tornatori.
Thank you. This doesn't really have to do with the budget. Well, yeah, it does. It has to, it goes toward your 2 employees you'd like to hire. But what's going on in DuPage County, the environment, where we saw 800 felony cases in 2013, and that's risen, it's doubled to almost 1,600. What's the environment? What's going on?
I don't know that it's necessarily just our county. And I don't think there's one solid answer to that. I can give you a brief example. Last week, I was reviewing a case when I was still covering a court call, and it was a car burglary, and it was about 2 inches worth of police reports, right? So I don't know how long it took me to get through that, an hour or whatever. And I realized that I didn't have all of the discovery. So I made contact with the state's attorney, who then sent me 34 videos and 13 audio tapes. 7-10 years ago, I think there was much less discovery. Now with body cameras, squad videos, certain crimes have to be video recorded every time they talk to a witness, depending on the kind of case. So there's just a lot more to go through. So instead of just the 2-page or the 2 inches of police reports, now I have hours, dozens of hours of things that we have to wade through. And as a lawyer, I don't feel comfortable personally pleading someone guilty to a crime if I haven't looked at everything, because I don't know what might be there. So there's just a lot more to navigate in a felony case, or really in a misdemeanor. The same thing that applies to DUI. DUIs aren't simple. They're not 3-page police reports anymore. They're 3-page police reports and a bunch of videos and audio tapes that we didn't get a decade ago.
Jeff, I'm asking about the number of crimes.
I'm not sure, and I think Mr. Berlin would be better able to answer in terms of if there's a rise in crime, because he has 100% and I only have what we get appointed to. So I don't know if we have gotten appointed to more. I know we're not resolving cases as quickly because of the amount of discovery, at least in part, I think that's why. But in terms of the rise in crime, I know the felony numbers, at least the last couple of years, had been up. I don't know if they are this year or they were, but we've been getting a higher percentage of felony for the last several years. Misdemeanor has remained more or less stable, which is reflective in my numbers.
Okay, so then I misinterpreted that one graph that said there were 800 in 2013 and 1,600 in 2020. You were talking about hours of, I thought it was number of crimes.
Well, no, it's a number of open cases. So in 2013, my staff was holding 868 open felony cases in March of 2013. So you are correct, it is. We've doubled the amount of cases we currently are working on this March compared to 7 years ago.
Okay, Member Tornatori.
A great presentation. As somebody who deals with your office on a regular basis, as a prosecutor and DUI court, I can tell you that each and every one of the people in your staff are professional, and I don't know how they do it, but they do it with a smile on their face every day. So you are to be congratulated for it. I think your ask is certainly not beyond reasonable. When we talk about things like the focus court, we've always talked about how great that is for the people in our county, and it is. But once again, I don't know if it's an intended or an unintended consequence. Your office feels that burden. I think the increases in the felony, while not every one of those felony offenders is assigned a public defender, more than likely, sometimes more likely than not, they don't have money for an attorney or they wouldn't necessarily be committing the crime. And, the 800-pound gorilla in the room sometimes is our proximity to Cook County. That's why maybe we have more felony cases and more crime than maybe Will County, where it's a little more difficult for people from the city to go out there and commit a crime where it's a 20-minute ride to come out here. Tack onto that COVID, tack onto that technology. You're exactly right. You get videos, you have to go through them. It means you have to have access to a computer or a laptop. You just can't read them while you're sitting necessarily, eating a sandwich. There's got to be the technology. All of that factors into it. So, I think your ask is reasonable and your office does a great job. And more importantly, we need to represent people who need to be represented for a variety of reasons. The practical, we don't want to be filing, responding to appeals for ineffective assistance of counsel. And also we want to do the right thing. So to your office, congrats. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm just going to ask the question, and I hate to ask it, but I have to ask it because we had a meeting last week where we saw that we're facing potentially a $16 million deficit on top of a $14 million deficit this year. And if we don't address it, it's about 9% per department shortfall. And if we don't address it with your office, some other office is going to have to address that, or the taxpayers are going to have to address that, or we're going to have to deficit spend. So whether it's feasible or not, I'm going to ask every department head what a 6 or a 9% walk back would look like.
Well, I don't know exactly, but it would be pretty devastating because we are so short. It would be people. I mean, 94% of my budget is people. I've cut everything else that I can within reason. So I would have to have less people. And I don't know, as a manager, I do have a great staff. They do a great job and they're happy to be there. But I think if I ask them to do way more and then pay them less, which is essentially what I would have to do, and spend less time in the office. Like if I were to furlough people, I can't afford to lose headcount. I can't afford to lose lawyers. I just can't right now. So I think for me, it would be significant furloughs. And I don't know, frankly, how we would manage the number of cases that we have, but I think that would be my answer. I mean, that's the only thing I could possibly cut would be people somehow. And I don't think cutting an actual person would help. I would just have to cut their time is probably what I would have to do.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Seeing and hearing none, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Move on to the State's Attorney's Office presentation. State's Attorney Berlin. And let me just say, while we're getting set up here, I apologize. I know there's an environmental committee. I'm on that committee. I already informed the chairman that I can't be there. We need to go through these budgets. So,
good morning.
Good morning.
So I will talk about some of the numbers, what we're dealing with, and moving forward, what we're asking for. And let me just start by what we're asking for is not an increase an increase due to additional headcount. We're actually just asking to fund the open positions that we have, that we've intentionally left open in order to meet our budget for this year. So our proposal for 2021 is 4.5% or $442,715 more than last year. That just assumes filling the 8 open positions that we have, including 4 assistant state's attorney positions and 4 support staff positions. It also includes an increase in our information and technology services line item by $47,000. That's for TechShare and Input Ace, which all of our cases now are being handled digitally. All of the discovery is being tendered digitally. And it's also allowed a number of our attorneys, when they don't have cases up in court, to work from home so they can still work on their files. I would remind this committee that in 2015, we eliminated one position. In 2016, we eliminated 9 more positions. So we've eliminated 10 spots in the past 5 years. In 2018, we agreed to leave 8 support positions vacant in order to meet the budget. We did not seek to fill those spots in 2019 or 2020, nor are we asking to fill those positions in 2021. Over the past 15 years, we've stayed within our budget every year. We've made the necessary cuts and adjustments, and yet we have performed at the same level while absorbing those costs to our budget. We heard from Mr. York in terms of the number of cases and felonies, and just a little historical data. If you go back to 2013, there were 2,467 felonies. In 2014, that went down to 2,197. We saw a big increase in 2017, where it went up to almost 2,700. In 2018, there were over 2,900 felonies. In 2019, we had 2,864. So far, for the first 6 months this year, 1,123. There was a period there for about 2 months where there was a decrease, obviously due to COVID, but the numbers are starting to rise again as the weather's gotten warmer and people are outside. So we've seen a 25% increase in felonies since 2016. We have, in terms of some of those cases, burglaries, we had 250 in 2016. In 2019, we had 488. That is a 95% increase. This year, so far, the first 6 months, 234. So we are well on pace to where we were last year. Identity theft is up 37% in 4 years. And aggravated vehicular hijacking or carjacking, we had 3 in 2017, we had 4 in 2018. In 2019, there were 8. And so far this year in 2020, we've had 10 in the first 6 months. 3 of those committed by juveniles. And in 2019, 2 of the 8 were committed by juveniles. Our felony caseload, total pending cases right now is 2,700. Last year at this time, we had 2,500. So we have an 8% increase, which is due to 2 things. Obviously, cases have been being disposed of on a slower pace due to COVID-19. And also, the Bail Reform Act has resulted in more cases because we've seen a huge increase in failures to appear. And when they don't appear after 30 days, at least in the class 3 or higher felonies, they get indicted for bail jumping. So that has also increased our caseload. The heroin opioid epidemic continues to be a problem. We saw a 32% increase in possession cases from 2018 to 2019. 240 heroin fentanyl possession cases, up from 182. The good news is our prescription pill cases are down 22%. But unfortunately, what we've seen is people that can't get prescription pills, who are addicted to those pills, then turn to heroin. Mr. York talked about the focus court. This is a courtroom that received an award from NACO, and it continues to produce outstanding results. But we have 434 predisposition cases in that courtroom and 529 post-disposition cases. So almost 1,000 cases now pending in our focus court. But these offenders in that courtroom are getting the treatment that they need. And the idea is, hopefully, when they complete the program, they will become productive members of society. Our appeals unit, just to give you an idea of how busy it has been, we filed 53 briefs in 2018. Last year in 2019, we filed 75. That was a 41% increase. So obviously a higher caseload, more people are getting convicted. We currently have 196 open appeals and 23 pending post-conviction petitions. Our juvenile delinquency cases, the good news is the delinquency cases filed are down, but one of the main reasons for that is we're doing a lot more diversion and handling a lot more of these cases outside of court. Our juvenile probation department is by far the best in the state of Illinois. We have the best outcomes anywhere in the state. But our cases, our JD cases were up by 30 in 2019, and there were 30 school threat cases that we filed. So that explains that increase. Obviously, any case involving a threat to a school is taken extremely seriously, and those cases are handled in court as opposed to out of court. Our diversion court continues to be a huge success. We've now accepted 319 cases since the program started. This past year, we saw a 40% increase in the number of cases accepted into the program. There's currently 77 active cases in our diversion court, and we continue to operate with a 97% success rate. So it's an outstanding program. These are for first-time nonviolent felons. And again, they accept responsibility, and there's a number of things that they have to do as part of that program. And if they complete it, they're able to withdraw their guilty plea and have the case dismissed and obtain an expungement. Child support, we went from 4 attorneys down to 3. Just a few years ago, we had 6 attorneys. We've cut that in half. We have 3 attorneys, and we're still bringing in over $40 million a year in unpaid child support. Again, we have, in terms of percentages, compared to the other collar counties, we lead the way, and we continue to do so and provide a great service to the community. So again, my ask is not to increase headcount, it's just to fill the open positions that we have. As I've said in the past, we continue to negotiate cases and handle each case on a case-by-case basis and come up with, we believe, with what is a fair disposition, but we will not make offers or negotiate cases based on our inability to try them because of financial reasons. We'll do what's right, but I will not compromise public safety in order to save the cost of doing a trial. In the past, this board has been terrific when we've had the case where we need to hire experts and we have to come before the board or move money around. The board has always approved that. Obviously, we try and avoid it. We're very cost conscious, but it's important to know that public safety won't suffer. We've lost a number of attorneys really up until the past few months before COVID hit, but a number of attorneys left because they got jobs making a lot more money in the private sector. And that continues to be a challenge for us. We hire lawyers, we train them, and then unfortunately we can't compete with the private sector. And the reality is we've lost some to the Cook County State's Attorney's Office because they pay more money. So this continues to be a struggle for us, but we have been able to overcome that and fill these positions, except for the ones that we're leaving open. I don't know if you want to handle questions on that now, or do you want me to just go to the Children's Center budget?
Why don't we go through all the budgets and then
Okay.
we'll open up for questions.
So Children's Center budget, what we're asking for is a slight increase, which is $15,000 more than our 2020 budget. And that's simply due to the fact that we were under budgeted in salaries last year. The Children's Center, in 2009, just to give you an idea of what we're dealing with, we opened 297 cases. In 2019, we opened 488 cases were referred, 293 were actually opened. So far in 2020, we've accepted 162 so far. So we're really on the same pace as last year. 647 family members have received advocacy or other Children's Center support services. 488 family members received crisis intervention services. And the number of family members referred to counseling or mental health intervention was 438. Again, these are the most serious cases, some of the most serious cases that we deal with. The Children's Center handles all sexual and physical abuse cases in the county. We have agreements with every police department. And we continue to use our Cellbrite technology, which is a cell phone extraction tool. And we're able to do that in these investigations. We're also able to help some of the other departments when they need help downloading information from cell phones. So it's just a slight increase. And again, it's just to address the under budgeting last year. So in conclusion, for both of these budgets, our office continues to lead the way in the state of Illinois when it comes to criminal justice. And we've done an incredible amount in terms of diversion and in terms of our focus court and how we handle drug possession cases. But the reality is we've seen an increase in violent crime. And when it comes to violent crime, diversion is not an option. Focus court is not an option. Those cases are prosecuted and we seek severe sentences because those are the crimes that have the biggest impact on the community. And the last thing I would remind this committee of is very easy to put a dollar value on the cost of prosecutors, the cost of public defenders, the cost of deputy sheriffs in the courtroom, and the cost of incarceration. Those are finite numbers. We actually know how much they cost, but it's very difficult to put a dollar value on the cost of crime in the community because these violent crimes that we're dealing with have an impact on the community that lasts for years and years, and the public never forgets. And that's what we need to remember when we talk about criminal justice.
Thank you. I think I probably join the rest of the board in saluting the fantastic work you and your staff and your office have done over the years. You've been our state's attorney, very proud of the work that you do. Questions for the state's attorney? Anybody? Let me ask two questions real quick. One, I see on the revenue side that you're anticipating being down $600,000 plus in revenue for next year based upon that. That's another contributing factor to the pressures that we're feeling financially, correct?
So, and I think, yeah, that's correct. I think a lot of that is the fines and fees bill that was passed that went into effect last year. It was supposed to be revenue neutral, but we're finding out that that's really not the case.
And the other question I'm going to ask of everybody is, you've got this walk down question. If you were to have to, no other way to make the budget balance, have to come down with 5 to 10% cuts, what would you do?
It would have a devastating impact on public safety. That's what I can tell you. You know, we're 93 or 94%. Our budget is salaries. If I had to lay people off, that means that there are certain crimes we simply would not be able to prosecute. That's the reality of that. And that would actually cost the public a lot more. As it is, my attorneys are 24/7. We have a rotating screening division. We rotate attorneys on the weekends. They're going out at 3, 4 in the morning. Sometimes they're out there all weekend on cases. They're here till late at night. They're here on the weekends, and they don't get paid extra. The caseloads that we have are above what's recommended by the American Prosecutors Research Institute. But they're dedicated and they continue to do it because they believe in the mission. They're going to continue to work that hard. But we all have to be careful about them getting burned out. And that's just something that we're dealing with. So
similar to the public defender, it'd be furloughs, layoffs, salary cuts.
and we'd have to close courtrooms, which would mean an increased caseload, or again, certain crimes that we'd have to explain to the public why we can't prosecute those, which would just have a devastating impact on the community.
I saw Chairman Eckhoff.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, I'd like to echo what Mr. Larson said. You do a great job, you and your office, and it's really been a pleasure working with you over the last few years. How many of the defendants that you end up prosecuting are from outside of DuPage County?
I would estimate over half. And that's based on, I know that almost half of the jail population is from out of county. And just from occasionally, on a typical Monday morning, I will go through the cases that we filed over the weekend. And sometimes I look to see where they're coming from. And it's always at least half are coming from out of county.
Okay. And then I've been to a NACO, a Judicial Public Safety meeting for the last couple of years in March, and they continue, portions of the country continue to push this bail bond reform where there's little or no money put up by a defendant. And I keep reading in the papers how, especially in Cook County, these people get out of jail and go back to their neighborhood and terrorize those people again, or continue to, I don't know, I read some story about somebody who carjacked 5 cars in 5 days because they kept letting them out. The last car he hijacked was the first one he started with. So do you have any comments regarding how effective or ineffective that system is?
I can tell you, based on the numbers that we've seen here in DuPage County, that the new bail law has been a failure. We've seen a huge increase in failures to appear, people not showing up in court. One of the carjackings that we charged early this year was a person out on bond for a felony in Cook County. He actually violated his bond in Cook County and then posted a second time and was out and came out here and committed a carjacking. The state's attorneys, Illinois State's Attorneys Association, has written a letter to the Supreme Court, and we've told them that we would support a change in the law that would basically be an in or out system, but it's our request that anyone out on a forcible felony, there should be a presumption of detention. The reality is that may actually increase the number of pretrial detainees here in this county. We don't want people in jail, pretrial, just because they can't post bond. We all would agree that that is unfair, but we do want those who are a danger to the community awaiting trial, we do want them detained. And there are a number of measures in place, including the right to a speedy trial, to protect their rights. It's trying to find the right balance, and I know that we're very involved. We were involved with the General Assembly trying to address this issue, and unfortunately everything kind of got put on hold in March with COVID.
Thank you.
Thank you. Member DeCiani.
Thank you, Chairman. Bob, as you know, I've always been a fan of your office. I think you do a great job. You've got great staff, and we've got a huge, as you mentioned, increase in especially violent crime and felony crime, most of which is coming out of Cook. Are there any opportunities? I brought this up at finance, last finance meeting. I know we've got public information folks in your office. We have them at the county board office. We have them at the sheriff's office. Everybody seems to have their own staff in that area. Is there any opportunity to possibly consolidate some of that staff and have county board staff helping you out in those areas, or look at ways to try to without hurting your boots on the ground, so to speak, but possibly get some consolidation in that area. I don't know what your staff costs in that area, but how many people you have dedicated for public relations or public information, but that might be something that we might be able to look at across the board and see if there's any ways we can consolidate some of that and possibly, save some dollars there without hurting, services and the effectiveness of your office.
We have one public information officer, Paul Dira, who really does an outstanding job. And the problem with trying to consolidate that position is Paul spends a lot of his time in court following these cases, so he gets the facts right. We also have to remember that we've got a Supreme Court Rule 306 and 308, which limit what we can say about a pending case. And we have to be very careful about the information that we're putting out. Oftentimes we'll wait until right after bond court because we can comment on things that are part of the public record. But we're always very careful to avoid jeopardizing a defendant's right to a fair trial. I think we have one person handling the public information for our office. I think it's a pretty lean operation as it is. Certainly, I appreciate the idea of trying to consolidate and save money, but we may look to other areas that might be more effective.
Member Desart, then Member Tornatore.
Thank you. Bob, I want to add my voice to the chorus of people commending you and your staff. You guys do an excellent job, and I'm so proud to be associated with you. I have a question regarding the filling the 8 open lawyer positions. The one side of the coin, the question is, what happens if we don't fill those 8 positions? The other side of the coin is, if we do fill those 8 positions, you said caseloads are above what's recommended currently. If we did fill those 8 positions, would that bring the caseloads in line with what is recommended? Thank you.
Sure, and thank you very much for the compliment, Member Desart. The 8 positions, there's actually 4 attorney positions and 4 support staff. But yes, by filling those positions, that would reduce the caseloads of the attorneys that we have, and it would certainly lighten their caseload and allow us to pay more attention to these cases. One thing I want to echo what Mr. York said. The cases are far more complicated today. We have digital evidence in almost every case. There's videotape statements or audio tape statements, and many times there's squad video. So that the preparation of these cases takes a lot longer. Cell phone evidence, there's oftentimes financial records. So it requires more time for our attorneys. And we do want to do things right. We don't want to make errors where we have to retry these cases. So the answer is yes, it would absolutely help ease the caseload of the attorneys that are handling these cases right now. Thank you.
And what would happen if we did not fill those 4 lawyer positions? What would your department look like then? I'm trying to play devil's advocate on both sides. Thank you.
So, right now we're operating with these positions open. We did that intentionally, and people are just working harder. They're going to continue to do the work. That's the kind of people I have in the office. They come in, again, on the weekends. They're here in the evenings. It's just my concern is I don't want them to get burned out. And obviously, the more overworked they are and the less sleep they get, there's a higher chance that we're going to make errors. That's just proven. So that is something that we all need to be concerned about.
Thank you.
Tornatore. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Bob. Everything I said about Jeff York and his office, I'll say about yours. You guys do a magnificent job. I work with your office at least 3 days a week. They are professional, and I think what's unique about the criminal justice system, particularly during COVID, is that there are things that you can't do dealing with criminal justice that you could do with
being an accountant or something else. You can't Zoom a murder trial. You can't have the kinds of things that we're doing remotely that way. I know there has been significant consolidation even in the DUI courts. We used to have 3, we now have 2. You've got state's attorneys who are going back and forth to those rooms. I see them going from room to room and working very hard. So I think that while we're asking everybody to take a cut, and I know that if you didn't get the money, your office would still do the job. I think we need to somewhat prioritize where the cuts are going to come from as opposed to across the board, and understand that there are unique situations in some of our departments. And again, the criminal justice system being one of them, when we're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to build a new courtroom so that we can have another courtroom for jury trials because of the social distancing problem. That in and of itself might, is almost the equivalent of what you're asking for. So those are the things we have to focus on. And, again, summing up, you do a great job. I'm glad you're here. We're dealing with the proximity of being in a county that I've also happened to practice in and prosecute in. Quite frankly, the difference between Cook and here is a joke. State's Attorney's Office in Cook County, they're dedicated, wonderful young state's attorneys, but it's like a fish, boy. It just starts at the top and it smells and it comes all the way down. And that filters throughout the entire courthouse, from the judges to the state's attorneys to the public defenders to the clerks to deputies. You walk into Maywood, Rolling Meadows, or anywhere else in a criminal case, then come out here. It's like going to Schaumburg Boomer Stadium and Yankee Stadium. There's a significant difference. We should be proud of that. We need to continue that, and your office has got us there.
Thank you. Thank you. If I just have one more thing, you talked about the justice system in the county, the level of cooperation that we have. When there's an issue, Jeff York and I talk all the time. We're able to talk to the chief judge when issues come up, sometimes after hours. Our sheriff, our probation department, our stakeholders, we all work incredibly well together. And it's kind of unique in that regard. So thank you.
Member Zay. We're going to cut everybody across the board 9%, whatever. It's not. I mean, we have to look at priorities of what we have here in this county. Is the criminal justice system a priority here in DuPage County? I think it is. So I think we have to find other ways to cut. We have to look at areas that are not mandated that county government do. Those should be the first ones that should be cut. I mean, when I'm hearing, when Member Larson asked you about cutting, being closing courtrooms, not prosecuting crimes, that's a big warning to me. That stuff, that's a priority of mine, and I think a priority of this county is public safety and keeping our residents safe. And I think we have to find, this board has to find another way of cutting funds or doing, because of the pandemic, other areas we're gonna have to cut. But criminal justice system, I do not think is one of those areas we're gonna have to be able to cut. It's just too important, and that's who we are in this county. And I think that's why people come and have lived here for years, is because of the safety that they have. And if we were to cut your office and the public defender's office, sheriff's office, I think that would have a devastating effect here, not only to our staff, but county overall. So we have to find other ways to be creative and, set priorities here to what we have to do in the county. If it's between, hate to say it's between cutting criminal justice, cutting $1 million out of the grant fund. I'm going to cut $1 million out of the grant fund because this is too important for us here in the county.
Thank you. Yes, thanks to both of you. I think DuPage County is a model of what criminal justice should look like. It is fair, it is effective, it is colorblind, it is blind to economic circumstances, and it keeps the public safe while giving fair treatment to those who come before the court system on the defense side. And so I'm proud of the work that both of you do. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
With that, do we have any old business? Do we have any new business? Without objection, we are adjourned.